Welcome back. One of my subscribers sent me this game. I'm rated only slightly higher than them, but they thought I could help them figure out what went wrong, and I'm going to try. The reason that they thought of sending it to me was because I did a video on the Vant Crucis opening. However you pronounce that, that's when white opens with e4. And in that video, I said something like, I think you can just play good, solid opening principled moves and take space in the center and make sure everything's protected, and the game will be decided later by tactics and blunders. And that's true usually. I've faced this a few times, which is why I did a video on it. But in this game, AndersonConnors had some trouble. Okay, just to be clear, this was a blitz game, 5 minutes with a 5-second increment. Anderson opened well with D5, taking some space in the center. The opponent blitzed out C3. Not the best move. Anderson looks like he's going for a reversed Queen's Gambit here, and opponent blitzes out A3. As if they've played this a lot, and they know that opponents are confused by it, so they're just going to blitz out a few pawn moves, perhaps wanting to chip away at this with a B4. And yes, Anderson does end up looking like he's playing the reversed Queen's Gambit, but still, it's a good move. Black already has a slight advantage. It has a lot more space in the center, but white has 5 minutes and 10 seconds left on the clock. Another blitzed out pawn move. It's a mistake. Stockfish says black now has a minus 2.3 advantage. Anderson makes the best move in this position. E5, taking even more space in the center. Look at all the squares that these pawns control. The knight is also hitting this square. The bishop is hitting that pawn. The queen is, looking at all these squares as well as these squares. And the opponent blitzes out B4. 5 minutes and 12 seconds left on their clock. So Anderson gives this a big think. And Stockfish, let's turn Stockfish on. There we go. It wants him to play E4, I guess, to lock down these squares and let this pawn go, or not let it go. This pawn is protected. But it's the third best move in the position to move that pawn forward, which he did. And this blocks the path of that bishop, and perhaps also prepares this, which further restricts the white spaces on white's side of the board. And this, for the first time, the opponent did play the best move, according to Stockfish. But still, black has a huge advantage, except for on time. Anderson's starting to slow down while the opponent is staying above 5 minutes the whole time. Best move, take that pawn. That's what he did. That's one of the center pawns, while Anderson still has two center pawns. The opponent takes back, which was pretty much the only move in that position. Here again, Stockfish wants him to play E3, E5, wow, E4. I should add that to the blooper reel. Not only does it give this bishop fewer places to go, it will probably go here, but it restricts these squares on white's side of the board. What he played wasn't a bad move. It was developing another piece, perhaps preparing to castle. It adds some protection to this pawn. But in here, opponent just throws out another move. Now has 5 minutes and 15 seconds left on the clock. The opponent hasn't spent more than 2 or 3 seconds on any of these moves and is actually gaining in time. So, not sure what that was about. Maybe trying to prevent this. But still, Anderson has a 2-point advantage. Opponent puts the bishop back on its home square. Look at this. All these pieces are on the squares where they started. That can't be good, right? Anderson has the two central pawns controlling all of these squares, has the knight covering these squares, has the bishop covering that square and protecting this pawn, and covering here. This bishop, again, still hitting that pawn. Looks really good. Plays one of the top 3 moves, gets this knight out. That's why he played this, because he didn't want the g-pawn to go forward. That makes sense. Good thinking, Anderson. All right. White plays their best move in this situation, but still only pawn moves, and black's up -3. None of these moves are hugely bad or hugely good at this point, except that black is continuing to be better. Now here, all those earlier times when it wanted black to play e5 or e4, now it wants d4 or castles. I don't know that I would have castled with these pawns on their way down. I don't know if I would have castled into that, but the opponent has flank pawns on the other side too. So Anderson chose to keep his king in the middle of the board, but that, I think, has got to be a mistake because, well, no, maybe not. Oh yeah, because you had that pawn there to keep this pawn from moving forward, which it does. Now the knight has to move. Where does the knight go? Stockfish wants in the middle or back here. And Anderson went back there, losing some of his advantage. Okay, but he still has the advantage. That's actually not a bad move, locking this in. Stockfish didn't really like it, but I see the strength of this pawn-only opening is that it's slowly biting away from the sides, not really caring about the center. Hold on. Sorry about that. That was a call from my very important spouse. But what I was saying was, I see why this opening could be intimidating, especially since the opponent now has 5 minutes and 20 seconds left on their clock, whereas Anderson's down to about 4 minutes. It looks like an imposing thing, and you're not sure exactly how to continue moving. Stockfish wants this knight to kind of circle around this way, or maybe come down and then back up to here, since you've already decided not to castle. But he finally plays e4, which should have been played, as we saw a few turns ago. Now that the knight has blocked this rook, white took that pawn, but that turns out to be a blunder. Why? The computer is saying knight to e5. Well, not sure exactly why that's so great. What does that do? And then it says the queen would have gone back. Wow, it's -4 now. But the queen would have gone back, and then you would have taken this pawn. Okay. Well, not sure about that, but he still has the advantage even after this move. Lost a bunch of it, but still has it. The queen does go back. Maybe Stockfish knew what the opponent was thinking. Still wants knight e5. Best move. Nope. Now knight. Okay, it wants both of those now. Stockfish really wants to play both of those moves at the same time. I see why that works, because the h-pawn is pinned. Once you get this knight out of the way, this h-pawn really can't take because you just win a rook outright. That's a good tactic. We can all keep an eye out for this pin. It doesn't look like it's pinned because the knight's in the way. But when you move the knight, it's not in the way anymore. Okay. Well, he didn't see that. He did play knight to e5. Good job again. Still has an advantage. Where did it go wrong? I'm skipping forward. That wasn't great. Ooh, the knight hops out finally. White is finally starting to develop pieces, but that wasn't good. And now, again, Stockfish wants him to take that pawn. Move the queen over. Ooh, not great. But still has an advantage. Okay, now this is obviously pointing at this, right? Still wants to take this pawn or move the rook to c4. Really? Wouldn't the bishop just take it? It would, it says. But that would be great, according to Stockfish. But this is the best. Knight to c4 is just fine. And rook to c4, that maintains an advantage? Sorry, that's not what happened, but how does that maintain an advantage, just giving up a rook for a bishop? Well, okay, whoops. You're pointing at this bishop, okay. With our opponent's propensity to just move pieces back to their home squares, I wouldn't be surprised if he just did that. But it also says we could just take here, and then you would take back, and then they would play that. And now you would take this pawn. Okay, well, it looks like missing that was a big problem here, but what Anderson played was that. There it is. Okay. That was the move that lost the game. That's because the opponent gets a pawn, and they're already a pawn up from something. Oh, when the queen came and got that pawn over there, and now they're another pawn up, and now the opponent is the one that's controlling center space as well as all this flank area. And we're starting to run out of places to go. The bishop can't go there. The bishop can't go there. Bishop can't go there. Can't go here, here. Okay, but that was it right there. Knight to f3 check. What were you thinking, Anderson? You didn't have to do that. Yeah, okay, but that was it. This pawn's been sitting here this whole time, and Stockfish knows that this pawn is pinned once the knight's out of the way. And he missed that tactic several times, and it took me a second to realize why it was good. But it just wins a pawn. Is it really that good? It just wins a pawn. Wouldn't they still do this or this at that point? It says White's best move would be to take this pawn, and then you would play rook to c4, which we have already missed. And if you play rook to a8, that's not that bad, but rook to c4 is better by far. Wow. And here it says they wouldn't take it, but I'm willing to bet that they would. I'm willing to bet that they wouldn't just move this back. Would they? I don't know. There's no guessing what this opponent would have played. They might have just put these bishops back on their home square and then brought this knight back and tried to get it back on its home square. I don't know the way that they were playing. I'm guessing they would take it, but I think Stockfish doesn't like that at all. And it says here you would now not take with the knight, although that would be okay, but it would be much better to take with this pawn. Then if they brought this back, you would do what? Knight to d3. Oh, because you've created a nice little outpost for yourself, and this time it's check and nobody can take it. And the king just has to move. Probably here. Then what do you do? Oh, and then you get the bishop for free. Okay. Not bad. Well, now there's no telling what White would do in this situation. It's another position where they have lots of possible responses. They might play king to c1 or c2. They might play queen here. Or here even. Queen to f1 now is the top choice. How about that? Or queen to c2 to come after the knight. But I mean, the knight's just going to go back, right? Yeah, it's just going to go back here on this nice little outpost. Okay. But that's where it went wrong. Right here where he checked, gave away a pawn. And we had, remember, we had already given away this pawn earlier. And the way to get that pawn back was this. Okay. Well, I can learn from this too. Hopefully Anderson and maybe some of you will also learn that a pawn is pinned even if your piece isn't pointing at it just yet, because the piece that you have in the way is about to move, and then that pawn is pinned, because then your rook will be open to it. Okay, well, hopefully that helped. That's something I would not have thought of probably. I think I would have been thinking in Anderson's shoes as well. I wouldn't have considered this. It's protected, and I'm not going to give up a knight for a pawn, is what I would have been thinking. Okay, well, we'll see you next time.